Hey guys, welcome back. In this episode, we are talking with Skyler Acord, legendary bassist, producer, and musician, as well as, most importantly, my brother-in-law. How are you?
I'm great. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And today we're going to be talking about his experience coming up in the music industry, all the cool acts that he's played with along the way, as well as his music, some of the things that he's learned that could be applicable to maybe business or other parts of life. He has such a phenomenal and incredible backstory I always like to talk with him about. So I think today we're going to be talking with him and kind of sharing with you some of that and give you a kind of what I hope to be a behind the scenes kind of sneak peek, if you will, at how the music industry works. Maybe you'll even blow the whistle on some things if you like, kind of put some people out there on blast. And, that's always been something, at least with my watch channel, that I like to do, is tell people how it is, be transparent. And I've always found people to really enjoy that. And if you guys would like to see more from him in the future, please leave that in the comments below, because he has such a cool kind of backstory in the things he's involved with. So we'll get started right now. So I think we should probably start, what are you most known for, do you think? Right? I know you do so many things. You do bass playing, you do producing, you work with a lot of top artists, 21 Pilots, so on, and so many others. You've won so many different awards, Bass Player of the Year, and many other countless awards in music industry and otherwise over the years. But what would you say you're probably the most known for?
I'm probably the most known for my work with Issues. And the longer I'm in the music industry, the more I realize nothing hits like your first, kind of breakout, I guess. And that was the first thing I did that anybody cared about. And in that band, Issues, which just ended in this last January, as you know, I don't know. I basically just got to see the world. I sharpened my teeth. Yeah, I'm really stoked on being able to see Asia for the first time in 2014 and stuff, and then go back a bunch. Australia, Europe, obviously, maybe not obviously, but Europe definitely. UK, basically everywhere except for, we never played the Middle East. We never played Africa.
With the band Issues.
With the band Issues, right. So we saw a lot of the world. Yeah.
That's awesome. I've always heard these stories, and I'm sure we can share some of these stories as well. But, Issues, for those that haven't heard of it, I know, how would you explain the band Issues to people that maybe haven't heard of it? What kind of genre? What's the style?
Right. I would say
it's a notable band.
Right. My water cooler pitch, or gas station pitch, when someone's like, what are y'all, a motocross team or whatever? Usually it's okay, so you take Limp Bizkit and you take Justin Bieber, and you squish them together.
I mean, how do you do that? How do you combine Justin Bieber and Limp Bizkit? What parts of them are you combining?
That's
music, their style.
That's a great question. Because when people do genre bending stuff, it's usually kind of chaotic at first, because people don't know what parts of which genre to squish together. But with Issues, it was always a thing of trying to make everything feel R&B, but make the palette really heavy. So it's not necessarily you have these really metal riffs under an R&B song. You have peanut butter and chocolate. You want it to be one seamless fusion of peanut butter and chocolate. So you want the riffs to sound R&B, and then you want the vocals to sound very rock and roll, but then also work in an R&B setting. So we have a lot of acoustic versions of songs and a lot of reimagining of songs to try to make them sound a little bit more in that vein, just to kind of test ourselves. Did we really do it? Did we write an R&B song with riffs, or is this just kind of cool because it's a weird combination you haven't heard? But yeah, that was always our kind of North Star.
So the band, how did you get to the point where you were actually touring the world and touring alongside some other really notable names, right? You've shared stages with Korn, maybe, Disturbed, different festivals.
Yeah, definitely festivals and stuff, but more directly, we toured a lot with Bring Me the Horizon, A Day to Remember. We did a thing with Linkin Park. But I don't know, because it's hard to...
You've played Ozfest though, right?
No, not Ozfest.
Because something similar?
I wish we were playing Ozfest, because Ozfest was dead by the time we started. But yeah, we played Warped Tour a million times. So anybody who's been on Warped Tour in the last 10 years, we probably played with them.
Okay.
So we've done a lot of cool shit. And kind of how we got started, at least how I got started with the band, was the band had come out of the ashes of another band that had put a lot of time into touring. So they already had like kind of a smoldering sort of like fan base, right? But when you have transition in the music industry, people care a lot. So like nobody's really paying attention more than when there's headlines, oh, this guy joins this band, or this guy talks about this band, or whatever. That's the whole like Corey Taylor has this to say kind of thing, right?
Okay.
But basically the old band Woe Is Me transitioned into Issues, and that caused kind of like a huge storm in our little corner of the internet.
Okay, so it's kind of like this alternative music, would you say? Just
Right.
to kind of like boil it down for people out there listening who are maybe into different genres. It's
Right.
Would you say maybe like the age range is like where do you see the age range for this type of genre? It seems a little,
Right.
a little younger, but
Definitely skews a
maybe
little younger.
they're growing up, right? Maybe up to
Mhm.
40 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at our Spotify stats now, it just runs the gamut because the algorithm like be algorithming. But when we started, the average age of our fans were probably like 12 to 15, something like that.
But is that how old you were when you started?
When I joined the band, I was 21, something like that.
So your fans kind of grew up with you. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
I definitely think so. Like the first time I ever had a drink of alcohol was after the band started.
Interesting.
And
What was it?
what was
Like something you
oh,
guys
God.
were sponsored by?
No, it was Twisted Tea. It was just it was at my 21st birthday. It was awful, but
Well, at least you were in a touring band. I mean, that's pretty cool, and that's something that I think not a lot of people can say, right?
mhm.
So you had this band. So you were in the Warped Tour, and you went on to do much bigger shows as well. But how did you kind of get involved into music? Because I think today at least I talk with a lot of just younger people out there. I mean, I know we're both young in a way, but Gen Z, younger, 18, 19, 20, they
Mhm.
maybe sometimes feel like they can't do the thing they want to do. And I think it's fair to say that you've taken your passion and made it into a career that's been successful, and you'll continue to do that. But how did you kind of maybe do that? How did you come to that conclusion? How did you know that you didn't want to maybe work a job or 9 to
Right.
5?
Yeah, well, I think that's the biggest thing is I feel like a lot of careers you can kind of like you can fail up,
Okay.
right? And I feel like a lot of my friends who have probably had a probably much more comfortable uh 20s than I did, they probably like a lot of them got a good job and then climbed the corporate ladder, or a decent job, climbed the corporate ladder. And they like, I have a friend who works at Apple now, and he started in the Apple store, didn't expect to climb up Apple, and then that's just like what he ended up doing, right?
Okay.
So I feel like with music, it helps to have a pretty specific game plan, because you don't necessarily know how it's going to happen in like, I guess to an extreme extent.
Mhm.
So for me, when I was growing up, my mom was singing around town, like doing gigs and stuff, just like local, like blues gigs.
So like a musical family, you'd
Right.
say.
Yeah, I would definitely say.
Anyone else? Your brother, your sister, they're
Yep.
musicians?
Yeah, my brother is a Grammy Award winning producer, just a badass. My sister is always going viral on TikTok with her songs and stuff she's doing. But yeah, growing up, like my mom was hiring these musicians that were making a living off of music. They weren't making millions, but they were playing locally. A lot of them weren't working a job, or if they were working a job, it was like at a music store or something.
Mhm.
They were gigging at night. So being a musician didn't seem that exotic to me. Just seemed like another career path.
It was almost a natural, organic path for you.
Right. It was just around. Yeah.
But do you think you could have done this and gotten into it, maybe not coming from a musical path, or do you think you even would have wanted to? Would you maybe even have had that exposure?
I think that like, I don't know. I mean, I think that like my brain is just naturally like skews creative and away from numbers and like I don't know. Like it's way easier for me to visualize a music theory concept than it is for me to visualize algebra concept, right? That always would be me, but I think music being there gave me a very clear like path to feeling recognized and an outlet. So I think a lot of people, a lot of talent goes wasted when people don't have opportunities to realize it young enough. I'm a pretty big believer in like, I don't believe in talent. I think it's like 99.9% of the time it's skill and time, and skill just takes time. So you have every once in a while you have a Prince or something who's just obviously just talented as hell, but I think most of the people out there just have exposure early enough, and they put the time in, they put their 10,000 hours in or whatever. So I feel like really getting good at music, at least to a professional level, really is just about dedication and like, I guess, time management, or having so much time you don't know what to do with when you're in high school, which is honestly how most people start shredding a guitar.
But you had to take a risk, where like at some point you had to decide like, this is what I'm going to focus on. And you have to take that risk, the risk of maybe not earning money, maybe not having a career, maybe
Totally.
the risk of pursuing the unknown.
Right. Yeah. And I invested too. Like I went to a music high school, or like our high school, and focused on music.
Was it like that High School Musical show where you had to like dance around? And, like,
no, it wasn't, but there were
do all
definitely
that
those
stuff?
there were definitely those type of kids there.
Okay. Would you be beating them up, or like how's the interplay between the rock stars and like
you know,
dancer kids, you know? Like,
you know
how
what's
does that
funny?
play out?
You know what's actually funny is, yeah, there's still cliques. It's like the jocks when I was in high school were like the hipster kids who were listening to like Sufjan Stevens way earlier than everybody else, or like Bon Iver and shit.
Okay.
Like folk music, indie guys. And then when I went to college, which was also for music, the kind of jocks or whatever were the traditional jazz guys with the skinny ties who were playing bebop every day. And we were the nerds who were playing like R&B.
But do they dance on the lunchroom tables?
The theater kids did.
Okay.
We always had this kind of joke of, we would get up and it'd be like 7:30. You're about to catch the shuttle. You're just so exhausted. Don't want to hear anybody talk. And all the theater kids are in there just going like, good morning. What a great day to feel something.
But so would you have like a mosh pit, or was that like just not part of the curriculum at that point?
Believe it or not, my first day in my second year of high school, there was a talent show, because of course there was, I guess. And we had a mosh pit.
At the high school?
At the high school.
Did anyone get hurt?
No one got hurt because they don't know how to mosh. They're just jumping around and pushing.
I feel like nowadays that'd be like a canceling moment, or they'd like shut down the high school. It'd be like a lockdown if there was a mosh pit. You know, they'd say like danger alert.
I will say,
fire alarm.
Yeah, it was still in the very early days of my high school,
Okay.
Tacoma School of the Arts, and they got away with a lot more than they probably should have, and it was sick. It was so tight.
But was it like that one Jack Black movie, School of Rock, you think?
Kind of, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was, because we had like songwriting class, we had like jazz combo class, like, and actually one of the sick things about it that I was just thinking about the other day was you could combine finals, like they'd sync up kind of like what the final projects for like the humanities or science or songwriting would be. So you could write a song about the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it could be your final project in songwriting, and it could be your final project in humanities.
So you were all in. I mean, you're saying, you know, from a young age, you were locked into becoming a musician or being involved in some way.
Yeah, at least from like 15 on, because before that it was just like a thing I did. It's like to play bass. And then I was like, you know what, let me think about taking this seriously. And then going to college, you know, music college is very expensive and there's a low return always. So you better mean it, you know.
So how did you go from there though, right? Like, so you're in school, you're trying to figure out what you want to do. How did you go from that and kind of putting it all together and getting yourself into this band with, you know, other up and coming artists, right? Maybe the singer of the band was already kind of well known.
Right, yeah.
You know, what do you think that they saw in you to kind of let you join that band that maybe set you apart from other people also trying to make it?
Well, honestly, just investing in general put me ahead of the pack. And it wasn't even like there was like a theory test or something. It was just like the reputation that, oh, he went to music school, like brought me in this scene, because it's a very like amateur, untrained scene. It's guys who have like a really cool vibe, really good at writing songs, but they'll guess and then hit magic every once in a while. So someone who goes to music school, it's like, oh, he's like the guy or whatever. So investing at all put me ahead of the pack. But then even then I had to fight pretty hard to get in the band, because the singer at the time was very visual, like oriented, and he wanted someone specific. He wanted a white guy, skinny, swoopy emo hair.
Is that how like band creation kind of works? Like if there's a band or some artists want to put together a band, even today, do they take into account kind of like who you are, what your way of living is, what do you look like? Do they like place any emphasis on that?
It depends on how corporate it is.
Okay.
If it's a band that's making money, then absolutely. Like I've gotten gigs because of how I look, and I've had to fight for gigs because of how I look. It just depends on who they want on stage and what they want the look to be, especially if there's, actual money changing hands, like in a real way. But then if you're just making music for the sake of making it and making it good, then obviously that's not usually a concern. But it starts to become a concern if something's not clicking. Like I always think about Oliver Tree. Do you know who Oliver Tree is?
I've heard of him. He's kind of like the silly guy that rides like a 50-foot scooter.
Right. Yeah. So
we'll put a picture here so people know, but it's an obscure kind of thing.
Right. He's a weird dude, and he's got songs now with like 1 billion plays. Like he's ridiculously massive, which is bigger than I would have expected until someone told me. But I remember seeing some interview with him where he was saying he was putting out the music, and it was in the same vein that it's happening now. But then he started like wearing like huge Jinko jeans from like the 90s with the stupid sunglasses, the bowl cut, the scooter, which hopefully you'll show pictures of.
Yeah, he honestly dresses like a clown.
Right, exactly. He dresses like a cartoon character from the 90s, like somebody off of like Rocket Power or something. And then it started working. It was the same music. Lana Del Rey had a similar path to where she put out the music, but her image wasn't totally like locked in. And then she kind of went back to the drawing board, came back with this like kind of 50s aesthetic, sort of the housewife thing, and then it all started working.
So it's kind of like you think maybe like a total package in some cases. Like you got to have the style, the music. There may be an extra little factor somewhere.
Right. Yeah, and I think like a lot of people kind of chalk it up to, oh, you got to be young, you got to be pretty, you got to be this and that, which is, I think, foolish because, in the same vein that like it took a lot of effort for me to get into Issues because I didn't look like the cookie cutter thing.
You remember Susan Boyle?
Exactly. Exactly.
Susan Boyle, I mean, what was she like on American Idol? And
it was like X Factor or something.
It was like someone's grandmother, but like she just sang amazing and she was just a big hit. I don't even know if she's around anymore.
Yeah, she's got her core fan base, and she, they always say like develop your
collab.
I haven't, but I have now. I'd be down as hell. You ever hear about that Susan album party hashtag?
No. You went to Susan Boyle's album release?
No, it was a thing where like they were trying to tease her album party, and the hashtag was Susan album party. But if you read it differently, it says Sue's anal bum party, and obviously went crazy viral for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it's just
you can't catch everything, right?
Okay, so there's like I don't even know what to say about that. Honestly, it's kind of hilarious. Like the Susan, whatever. So you're in this band. You guys are touring the world. You're playing with all these top names. You're building a pretty big name for yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens from there? I know during that time you won a bunch of awards. Like, are any of these awards that you have over at your desk?
Okay, so this one is APMA for Artist of the Year.
Well, let me see this. This is a heavy piece. So what is this exactly? Now, what award did you win with this particular one?
So allegedly it was fan voted. I think there was some strings getting pulled behind the scenes, but because we should have got that the year before. But
so you're saying some of these awards are rigged?
I think they were. I think our fans voted so overwhelmingly they couldn't ignore it.
Did you buy it?
No, I did not. I did buy this one though.
Now, what is this one?
This one.
You were the Artist of the Year.
All right, this was Artist of the Year, and then I got another one for Bass Player of the Year. I don't know where that one is. I think it's in stores somewhere.
So you're the Artist of the Year, different years.
Different years. Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm super proud of that.
And has that done anything for your career, do you think?
I think so, but I'm not as front facing with it as I should be. It should be in my like bio, and I just like kind of forget about it. But every once in a while, someone will bring it up to me, and I'll be like, oh yeah.
But what is that award? Now that one looks a little different.
Yeah, this one right here is something that we give to people when they beat us in Super Smash Bros. As a band. We've given out 3 of these.
So this is like a video game, right?
It's a video game. And yeah, one thing.
Yeah, I know the game, but just
right. Oh yeah, sorry. Yes, yes. For the internet, right?
That's actually an awesome thing to talk about, and I think personally, that's maybe a lot to do with why you have such loyal fan base. I mean, we were at a theme park the other day, right? Mm. And you had people coming up to you, like people working there saying, "Oh, I can't believe."
And that's not the first time that's happened when you and I have been at a theme park. Yeah.
And it's something about your fans at theme parks. But I guess what I'm trying to ask is, I've seen this and I've gone to your shows. You have like probably just the most loyal fans. I mean, of course, except for the John P. loyal fans, but
shout out John P. fans.
But, doing these little contests, right? So you would have a contest from what I understand, and you would have like a video game contest at the show. And if they beat you or the other members of the team, how would that work? Like, would they get something?
Right. So we were always looking for a way to make the meet and greet experience worth it, because in our scene, it's very like pious and like holier than thou kind of. And I think it's a little ridiculous to be like that. It's like, it's a business. But there's kind of a stink on meet and greets to where someone pays to meet you. And it does feel a little weird in that way, because I don't mind meeting people. Like, we go out to the merch table or outside of the venue every night and like always talk to people anyways. But if you're charging for it, we always felt pretty strongly there should be an extra experience.
Okay.
And this experience that we did was a Super Smash Bros. Tournament. So it's a fighting game. You have a bunch of little characters, they fight, and then there's a clear winner at the very end. And usually that winner was me. And by usually, I mean like we did a 2-month long tour. So a show almost every day. A lot of people don't understand how that works. When you're on a tour, you play shows 5 to 6 days in a row and then have a day off. And you do that for 2 months straight, 3 months sometimes. And we were doing that. And over the course of that entire tour, we gave out 3 of these.
That's awesome. So you kind of came up with your own ways to engage the fans, right? Like, you have social media, you have Instagram, YouTube comments, all that kind of thing, like the pre-built ways. But it's almost like you found your own way to kind of go offline and engage with your fans to cultivate some type of community.
Yeah, 100%. I still get tweeted about it. Like, someone will DM me and go like, hey, just wanted to say thanks for the music. Also, you kicked my ass in Super Smash Bros. I need that rematch. Like, if I go through my DMs, I probably have like 10 of those right now.
That's unbelievable. That's insane.
I
don't know.
I'm very thankful for that.
Do other musicians or artists or bands do this type of thing? Like, I've never seen this, but I'm not, as in tune with this type of thing.
I mean, people have their own little gimmicks and stuff. I would say This Wildlife, which is another band that's still touring, are probably the most creative with that kind of thing. And there's kind of been a movement in recent years because of the meet and greet stink, of people to kind of create different experiences. But as far as I know, Super Smash Bros. Tournament, that's exclusive to us. There might be a man out there that I haven't not thinking about, but yeah, that's our thing.
That's awesome. I like to see that kind of thing. I think it can be kind of important sometimes to, like, try to establish some type of connection with the people out there, make it a little bit more meaningful, especially, I mean, if that's your career path, it's obviously has to have some benefits as well. So yeah, and that's pretty cool.
I think one thing I always think about is, like, human beings are almost exclusively incentive based, right? So why would someone engage in my music if they don't care? And how are they going to care if I don't care? So if there's ways to, like, directly have like a communication between, especially like core fans, then that kind of energy of that kind of community radiates out, and they tell their friends, and also it's just a much more pleasurable experience than just like waking up in a tour bus, like hungover, play the show, go back to sleep. Like, it's nice to get to know people in like Des Moines, I just have like a random circle of friends in Houston, You
do seem to have, these unbelievable like pockets of fans, including Japan. I remember you telling me, how does that work? Like, how are you like that dialed in Japan?
Japan is funny. Well, Japan specifically, the reason I started being able to communicate so well with our Japanese fan base was because there were a group of 2 or 3 girls from Japan that would come and travel, follow Warped Tour around.
Like super fans.
Right. And they weren't necessarily super Issues fans, but they were definitely Issues fans. They were huge like Warped Tour fans, like that world. And Warped Tour's been around forever. If you don't know it, Google it. But, Blink-182, Eminem, Bad Religion,
Everybody.
Offspring,
Every
every rock band. Right. So they were following the tour around, and eventually I'm just like, who are these like very different looking girls in the front row every time? I started talking to them.
I didn't know they were Japanese.
I mean, I had a feeling
like something's different.
Right. Maybe it was the extra kawaii like outfits,
Oh, yeah.
But I started talking to them. If you're watching, hi guys, they know who they are. And when we went to Japan, that was those were the first people I contacted, and they took me around and like showed me the sights, showed me how to enjoy Tokyo and how to enjoy just different parts of the city in general, or the country in general. Eventually, one of them sold merch for us in Japan. And the biggest thing is they introduced me to their friends and taught me the language. don't ask me to say anything in Japanese anymore because the pandemic meant I had way less contact with anybody from Japan. But having just even a little bit of like communication ability there makes a huge difference. Like you say anything into the mic in their language, you're like, oh shit, like this guy's trying. And then also just the fact that like our music and our brand is very like Asian coded, I think. Like
what do you mean Asian coded? Like you've got an Asian guy behind a computer like coding it? Like
honestly,
now
this at some point probably.
This might be with AI and all this, geez. But no, I mean like what do you mean by that?
So right, culturally, like things are very different over there, especially in the media they consume, even if it's very westernized music. The stuff they like that gets really popular is way more melodic based, whereas American music is much more hook based. So if you watch like any anime, the first song,
stuff they can easily sing along to, maybe, or hum along to.
Honestly, a little bit harder to sing along to.
Really?
Yeah. They're a little bit more patrician.
So you're saying they like the challenge over there.
Yeah, maybe so, honestly.
They're like, we want the hard stuff.
Right, yeah. And it's like way more musical in that, you know, anytime there's like a surprise, they're more interested. Whereas American audiences, it's way more commercial. So if it can work in more environments, then it's going to work. Versus in Japan, they're really about the niche. So like even their pop music is really interesting melodies, really technical stuff. And our music is very like progressive and very melodic in that sense. So I feel like that's why we kind of resonated there.
That's pretty cool. Now, so you're touring the world, you've done all these things. Now I know the band has maybe gone through some ups and downs, and you know we don't need to jump all into it, but you know I think it's kind of interesting to note how maybe you know something that could have been you know maybe not the best situations, or maybe you know, taking you into launching your new projects and then even catapulting yourself to a higher level, working with 21 Pilots and a bunch of other notable musicians. You know, how did you go from having this successful touring band and then pivoting into, you know, launching your own, you know, musical career as an independent?
Right. So, yeah, the pandemic was the shutdown really was a great equalizer.
Oh, wow.
As far as creatively.
So were you able to tour? Like, how was that? I mean, I know that musicians say, right, they make a lot of their income based on touring.
Yeah, like we had a tour booked, and the first day of that tour, it was completely sold out. It was going to be a huge tour, and the first day was March 13th, 2020, which was the day that Live Nation shut down live music. Like we were in traffic going to the Palladium in Hollywood, and then we got the text like, okay, tour's canceled.
So you're saying it's Live Nation's fault?
No, I'm saying don't come at me, Live Nation.
Unless they want to sponsor my channel, then hey, they're phenomenal. Like,
right.
They're awesome.
But yeah, so that was like kind of D-Day. And it really hit us hard because at that point we had already paid all the deposits for, you know, we bought all the merch. We paid for the van, you know, the transportation,
management,
everybody,
tour managers, all the staff, the people. There's a lot of people that go into this, right?
Yeah, we had to pay a lot of upfront costs for that tour that got canceled, and then we had to sit on our butt. And then during that process, became obvious our album cycle was going to end, so we couldn't tour on it after the pandemic.
So you just launched an album, and you couldn't even tour, which is where the money comes from, right? A lot of the performance, the merchandise sales,
and that's how you promote the album too.
So you launched this new album, and then the rug is pulled out from underneath you,
totally,
and you can't even reap the rewards from the album.
Right, exactly. And at that point, we're in so much debt to the label. I'm still in a lot of debt to the label, but basically, I realized we had to regroup really quickly. So I started hitting our group chat with music ideas and like, you know, just starting like new music. It didn't seem like anybody was really interested, and that's fine. You know, people go in, it's a band, so everybody has to be on the same page at the same time. And I realized that I just had a lot of creative juice, so I was just like, I'm just gonna write my own music, and that's kind of how that whole thing started. And it's a big difference when you're a bass player in a band. So like any attention that I get is heavily earned. Like no one cares about the bass player unless he looks like me and is never.
You do like backflips and stuff on stage,
right?
You know?
Exactly.
People kind of know you for these backflips. Like, don't you sometimes get gigs and like performances based on like your on-stage moves. Did you learn that in Japan, do you think?
No, that's
A
just
little, little this, little that.
that's just a lot of practice is
Okay.
what that is. Ever since I was like in my first show ever. But yeah, like going from kind of like just a very much a support role to like the front man is a huge thing. And took a lot of like kind of just hyping myself up to be able to do, I guess. Like, yeah, I can do this, I can do this. And then I put the song out. I mean, this I'm skipping a lot, but I put the first song out and then people seem to receive it really well. So I was like, okay, I guess I should just do this and just believe in it. Because why not?
That's awesome. And we'll put a link in the description below of this video where people can check out, all your profiles, the streaming, the Instagram, all that, so they can check out your album and all the new music you're coming out with. I think it'd be pretty cool for people to check that out. So we'll put a link in the description below. Yeah. So you're releasing your own music, and like where are you drawing the inspiration from? Like what would you say kind of the style is? Do you enjoy doing this?
Yeah, oh yeah, I very much enjoy it. Biggest thing I love about it is like it's my own thing. I'm my own boss. It doesn't have to go through anybody else's sort of like I guess preferences. So if I like it, it happens.
They can't shut you down unless you shut yourself down, right?
Right, exactly. Which takes a lot of discipline to not do that. Because if you're sitting with a song trying to get it done for like 3 months straight, like every day, by the end of it, you hate it. So you have to just be like, at one point, I love this song. I need to finish it. But yeah, when I started it, I definitely had a pretty clear mission statement. I start every project like this where I have specific goals. And I feel like this could, it's probably applicable to a lot of things anytime you're starting a big project, but specific goals. And then you have to be open to those goals changing. And Issues started a similar way. Issues was very specifically like, let's mix the gent, which is an underground alternative genre, it's an onomatopoeia, believe it or not, R&B and melodic hardcore, which are three different, very different sounds. You scoot them together, and then you end up with like a new metal band, something that sounds like from the 90s. All of these are very specific references, but it was a helpful process. And for me, I just wanted to mix post-punk from and alternative music from the 80s and 90s and kind of like R&B that I like from today, and then metal because I love metal, which those three things again have never really been combined before to my knowledge. So if you start there, then you end up with something that maybe you can describe as something else. Maybe it's a new thing completely. Maybe it's still a fusion of those things, but whatever it is, it's new. It's unique.
So I guess what you're saying, at least what I kind of see and hear you saying when I put it all together, is you've always maybe kind of like to do things a little different, or you've always liked to combine different things to make something unique.
Yeah, everybody has their different strategies. For me, the easiest and clearest way to get to something unique is to combine things, because that's always just kind of been what I like when I listen to. I like people who like grab influences from all over the place. Other people, like, I feel like have a much narrower band of inspiration,
Okay.
but they do it really well. So like, I don't know, example, let me think. What's a good example? The Weeknd, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Weeknd isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. He's trying to do 80s sounding pop, very anthemic 80s sounding pop. And his thing is he's going to make it sound amazing. And that's like one very specific band. He does it really well. He hires he works with the best songwriters and producers in the world, and he can do that. And then for me, because I don't have those I'd love to have those resources eventually. I just have to get a little more creative from the ground up. And then hopefully I find my way to the best shit in the world. That's the goal.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, that strategy seems to have gotten you to this point. So I don't see, it makes sense that you would want to stick with it. Like, it's almost like you have like a proven strategy or a way that you approach these projects, and you're just kind of in that mid to early mid stage of like your next project. If you want to chop up all the things you've done, it kind of seems like a proven strategy.
I would say so. At least it's worked for me, and now that people are locked into me as fans of me, not necessarily just of Issues or 21 Pilots, which is a very new thing.
Now how was that? So you were, I'm not really sure how to describe your connection with them, whether you were part of the band or you were touring with them. Like, how does that work? I know connection, 21 Pilots, very, what would you say? Like how would you describe 21 Pilots? I know they're like one of the top bands, like saying like a modern day Michael Jackson, but not just like that level. Like, it's not the same genre. I know I'm going to get destroyed in the comments, but I'm just trying to like describe to the people maybe that
Right.
aren't like in the music industry, like the level that they're at, where it's like you were playing on like what, the Howard Stern show or something, or like Jimmy
Yeah.
Kimmel, or like who are these guys?
Yeah, we did like Jimmy Kimmel, we did
Yeah.
the BBMAs and a couple other random Jimmy Fallon and stuff. I would say as far as the level they're at, the easiest way to describe it is like, so for people of a different age, it would be like, let me think, like The Cure or something, or Depeche Mode or something.
So how did you get involved with them? Like, so you're here, you've got this band, you're starting to do your own thing, and then they come along, and then you're kind of just like, boom, you're on every show, you're on every tour, every concert, selling out arenas all over the world, private jets through Latin America,
Right.
all this kind of thing. Like it's just you just catapulted you to this top level overnight. Like, how did that come to be?
Right. Well, they come from the same world that Issues did.
Okay.
So they actually, this year they performed. And yeah,
and you beat them.
I don't know that they were nominated for that, actually.
Well, that means you still beat them.
I guess, yeah.
That's a win. A win is a win.
Yeah, there was a point.
A win is a win.
Yeah, I'll take it. But there was a point where we were like neck and neck.
That says Artist of the Year.
Yeah.
They're artists. That says Artist of the Year.
Yeah, hey, I'll take it. Let's go. But yeah, they performed, and our vocalist at the time was a huge fan. He was really early to them, so he was a big fan of them. And he performed one of their songs with them. And I think that's how they became aware of us as a band. And then, like you said, I just like kind of never stopped moving on stage. So I guess at some point, the singer for 21 Pilots was like, I might call that guy eventually if I ever need somebody. And then literally just randomly, I was just like walking through a Target. I get cold called by their manager. And that's like how that happened, like 7 years later.
That's like unbelievable. Like, the things you did and you put out in the world years and years and years ago, people remember, you left some type of touch on them, some impact, to where when they were looking for what you had, they knew that it was you because you were memorable in a way. Is that, you think that had anything to do with it?
Well, I think it's twofold, because people like that
They were holding that trophy against you. Like, we're going to show him. Like, he beat us that year, but like now, we're the top dogs.
Yeah,
we're going to put him on this jet and kind of say,
yeah, if he wanted it, I'd give it to him.
Maybe they'll see this and ask you for it back.
But yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from that whole experience is basically just try to, at least for me, like try to be as community minded as possible. Because people like that at the level they're at, they make damn sure that you're going to work well before they call you. They called all my friends, all my business contacts, people who knew me, people who knew people that knew me, to make sure that like my reputation wasn't as an asshole or like a druggie or, just reliable, hopefully.
And that's interesting you brought that up. It's something I've noticed just over the years, is that it's not like from movies, like you see like rock concerts and movies, and maybe back in the day, but at least just what I've seen, it's like pretty much a business behind the scenes. You've got just endless people. A lot of people that are involved are kind of corporate or like business casual kind of people, like pulling the strings, making sure people are there, like punching time cards, like showing up, like everything, like agile scrum meetings and things to try to make all the projects go out. I was blown away that like it's not this crazy like rock star lifestyle. Yeah, it's like people have like clipboards and like walkie-talkies and like we got to get here and there. It's like
it's like Disney on Ice or something. Like it's a construction site, like literally hard hat zones where the stage is, like every day.
Have you played on ice?
No, but I have played. I have played in 6-degree weather before. That sucked. So outside.
Did you play your bass with clubs?
No, it hurt. It felt like my strings were made out of glass.
And that's ridiculous. Why do you do that?
Because they told me to. That's the thing. They
21 Pilots told you to do this?
Yeah.
They really were mad about this trophy. They made you what?
Yeah, well, it was for some like football, like NFL, like promotional event or something outside in Indiana in January. So I had to fly there like January 5th or something, and obviously it was like sub-zero. It sucked. And then we played outside on an elevated stage. So we were like getting the wind and stuff. It was the most brutal thing. I honestly though, listening back, because there's videos online of this, we sound all right.
I guess money talks, right?
Yeah, that's all right. That's what they pay us for, you know?
Now, do you think the venue or the event wanted you guys as their first choice, or was it like you guys were the only ones like that were willing to do it?
With the cold.
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing about Tyler and Josh. The principles of 21 Pilots is if they don't want to do it, they are not going to. So some about it seemed awesome. I know honestly, Tyler's a big football head, or they all care about like college football
Okay.
a lot. A lot of Ohioans just really care about
Yeah.
OSU football. So I'm pretty sure there's a connection there.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's awesome. So now you're here, you're working on your music, you're continuing to do that, you're continuing to do production, and as well as your additional songs that you're making as an independent artist and working with others. But like let's get into the good stuff. Is there anything like what do you think is like the most ridiculous thing that's happened to you like in the industry or on tour? I know there's just the most ridiculous things that happen. Do you have any kind of like ridiculous things that
Oh
happen?
man, yeah, so many. Well, I've realized now that I'm like kind of bouncing around different camps and I'm a free agent, I have a lot more horror stories than most people, and that's just becomes clear when people like after sharing a beer after a show and everybody's just talking. And I'm like, yeah, this manager did this booking agent did that, and people are like, damn, bro, who hurt you? But yeah, I think the thing that sticks out to me is just how many people took advantage of us when we started. Issues, I mean.
Okay.
And I think like a couple of specific examples is like one, and I still like this guy, and he did a lot for us, but we didn't know where to push back. But our booking agent on our first headliner basically sold the whole thing away, and we didn't know any better. Um, but he had a very close relationship with our singer, and our singer wasn't being a good leader at all. So he kind of like went behind everybody's back, didn't take votes.
And so this booking agent, you're saying that he like went from behind you and like pretty much structured the deal and then flipped it to someone else.
No, not exactly. Basically, like, okay, so it was our first headliner, right? And what's really important in rock bands, especially, is the story. Like, if you're doing pop or something, it doesn't matter. Your first headlining tour can be like Monster Energy presents blah, 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 Pepsi, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But if you're a rock band, it matters that 30 years down the line, you can say, oh, this was the Rolling Stones' first headlining tour ever. There's a flyer in a museum or something, right? So that kind of story was kind of sold because it was sold to Live Nation, and it was sold to Journeys, and it was sold to our singer because he managed, I think, at least one or two of the bands on the tour. Not unbeknownst to us, he just like lied to us about it. We fired him eventually for many reasons, but that was one of them. And I still think that booking agent had our best interest in mind, but he didn't serve us in that moment. And I think that like our big lesson there was like, okay, so now we know where to push back because everybody's gonna have like their hands in the pot. Like what we should have done is played a much smaller tour because our tour was like probably 3/4 sold out the whole tour. Should have played a small tour and had it just be our name, and we would have banked out probably about the same, but we just wouldn't have developed any corporate relationships, which I think would have been better because it was too soon.
Now, is this a problem in the music industry or entertainment? I know you hear these things online or you see these stories about, different people coming out, the Harvey Weinsteins, all these kind of characters where it's like, it's kind of hard to know on the outside looking in, but like, are you saying that this thing happen, these types of things happen? Do people, take advantage, or are there kind of like weird anything like that going on? Like, is that like a widespread issue in
I would say, you mean
the
like
industry?
socially or like in a business sense?
Or just kind of like grimy people or like slime balls or like
Oh, totally, totally. I mean, like our manager at that same time, we don't know what happened to our money, but we know for the first probably 2 or 3 years of the band, we made no money.
literally
Literally,
like this Britney Spears stuff, right? I don't know the whole situation, but sometimes you hear these cases about, this musician, that musician,
Right.
like their uncle was their manager, he ran away with their money or something.
Right. Yeah, that's basically what happened with us. And he still works. I'm still getting texts from friends like, oh, that old manager guy, like he bought up all my publishing or absorbed all my publishing, and I haven't heard from him. So now he stole all my money that I'm ever supposed to make from this song, that song, whatever. So he's still screwing people, but he just like lost our money. We
You
still
want to just like go bust his door down and like
sometimes,
take it.
sometimes I've already like called him out enough, and technically I've signed an NDA, so I'm not gonna out him right now. But if you dig enough, you can find it. You know,
Okay.
that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I hear stuff like I'm on the fringe here. I hear things, just with the different musicians, and it does sound like, you know, people see money and then they take it and run. And
Hmm.
sometimes maybe they think, I mean, my guess would be they think, oh, you're just a musician, you're not gonna, call your attorney, or you're not gonna come after it, or you're not gonna know better, or you're too busy making music, or you'll just
Right.
make more tomorrow.
There's a lot of trust, especially early on, that I feel like is like a little naive. Especially we had a lot of naivety going on, because it's like from your perspective, you just fucking made it. Like you're in a stupid band in a van, just struggling, eating dry top ramen every day, right? And then out of nowhere, you have a label, a manager, a booking agent. Everything's
Everyone
taken
wants
care
to
of.
talk to you.
Right.
You're big in Japan.
Right. It just randomly, it's like, how the hell am I over here? People care about us, you know. So there's all this other cool shit to focus on. It's really easy to take advantage of us, like early 20 something. Like our guitar player was 19 when we started.
That's unbelievable. I mean, are things changing? Do you think that'll ever improve? Or like, just how do you see that situation? Because it's kind of like, it's bad to hear about this.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's still going on widespread, even with if it's just younger people or older people. But it seems like, I mean, you hear stuff about going back as far as Michael Jackson, and then
Oh, right.
like like Hanson, or like you just hear like, or the Backstreet Boys, you just hear about the same problems decades and decades and
Mhm.
decades. Like when does that change? Like, how does it change?
I think it's where the money goes. Because there's, Spotify just sent me an email, like a propaganda email about how much money like the music industry is making or whatever. Because 2014, I want to say, was the lowest year in recorded music history as far as like like general income for the whole industry. And then it started increasing because people started subscribing to streaming services. But I would argue streaming services are not the music industry as much as they're the tech industry. So most streaming services, when they don't pay artists fairly enough, they're siphoning money out of the music industry and then into their own investments, basically. So I feel like what that does is it forces artists to take whatever they can. So it puts us in like kind of a vulnerable state, which is exactly what they want. Like labels benefit from it, managers benefit from it, streaming benefits from it.
Now, do you think they're in? So we see the byproduct here, like where we're ending up in this situation where it sounds like the musicians and artists are making less, streaming services are making more. Do you really think that they're intending to do this, or do you think there could maybe be another reason? Like, are they maybe mismanaged? Do people just not care, and they're like, hey, we'll just lean on this side because it's safer for us, and I won't lose my job? You get into corporations, they got thousands of employees sometimes.
Right.
It's like, do you think it's just people cogs in the wheel of the machine, or do you think it's like some kind of industry thing where it's like, no, we're taking charge here?
Well, it's a little bit of both. It's a lot of status quo and a lot of the culture of like, oh, they're an artist. Like, why not starve? Or you get to play on stage in front of people. Like, why are you complaining about this money thing? Which I totally understand. It is a great job to have, but it's competitive enough. I feel like if there's money to be made by the art, then I think it should be at least considered. Like the artist should be considered, because I feel like at this point, it's just a symptom of capitalism in general. But you pay out as little as you possibly can, so your shareholders can see as big of a profit every quarter, right? So me as an artist, I feel very strongly that I'm treated as an expense, not a resource from like streaming services.
So you think maybe they're kind of just treating you're just kind of like the item that they're buying and selling in a way.
Yeah, like a commodity for sure.
And like they just view artists or musicians like, hey, if this entire genre dumps off, but we can replace it with more people in this genre, it still works. You don't think they're maybe trying to like fine tune or tailor the different, the whole ecosystem out there? It's just like, to them, it's just like AdSense or revenue dollars coming from ad spend. And then just like, it doesn't matter what anyone uploads as long as they can advertise on it. Like you could just upload just someone burping for like an hour. But if like the advertisers want to be on burp, like
right,
loops,
so
like,
hey, that's
it
happening.
works for them, you think?
Right. Well, I do think it's a little bit of that. I think that.
Didn't you say somebody does what, Halloween music, and they just
Yeah.
kill it
Yeah, I gotta find the article, but some dude, I read about some dude who makes just spooky sounds, just
for Halloween
ooh,
time, like
yeah,
ghosts and stuff.
yeah, and he makes like 300 grand a year or something,
Just like with his microphone, just
right? Which that's good for him. He figured out how to like make the system work for him, and I guess like for I'm coming from a place of a fan of
that's
music. Yeah,
ridiculous.
good for him, good for him. But
That's ridiculous.
coming from a place of a fan of music, I think we get better music when musicians don't have to drive for Uber Eats after they're like writing after a session. It's like if you can spend more time making the music, you just get better music. And I want better music around. And also as a musician, selfishly, it'd be nice to not have to do like a trillion side gigs to make like the main thing make sense. Because I'm gonna make music regardless, whether or not I'm getting paid for it, and they all know that. So why would they pay me?
I see. It's almost like, YouTube in a way. You've these endless amounts of content creators that don't want to or don't need to monetize. I mean, they just have the
Mhm.
passion for it. They're going to do it anyway, but they're kind of competing for the same eyeballs as the people that want to treat it as their job, right?
Mhm.
It's like if someone just doesn't have anything going on in life and they want to, make content, whether it's videos or music, and in your case, or movies or anything, and spend their entire night. They don't want to sleep and they just do it, but someone's like, hey, I want to work 9 to 5 doing this.
Mhm.
One person wants to make money, the other doesn't care. Even if they lose money, it's a hobby, but the
Right.
quality could be the same.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of give and take. I don't think that streaming should pay like enough to make a living if you're like an amateur musician necessarily. But I do think you should get paid if you contribute to the platform that Spotify has. Spotify's making money off of it regardless.
So do you think maybe there should be some kind of like standard, right? Because it's like technically with Netflix, I mean, I know there's certain things you have to go through in order to get in
Mhm.
some of the other video streaming platforms that are, subscription like that of that quality, but you can't, they kind of lay out an entire list of things you need to do. Like you have to use certain types of gear. They list out all
Mhm.
the gear. Your quality has to have certain criteria and you have to do certain things for them to even consider you. So,
Right. Yeah.
what if maybe like a Spotify did that for music, right? Like you have to be using this level of gear. I don't know if that takes away from the creativity.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like you can't really like if you have to take the reins completely off the art because for some reason people are just gonna flock to like okay, there's a band I really like, a Russian band, or excuse me, I think they're Belarusian, called Molchat Doma, and their stuff sounds objectively bad, right? It's just super lo-fi, but for me, as like a weird goth guy, I love it. Like they have 2.5 million monthly listeners. They go viral on TikTok all the time, and a standard like that would totally ruin it, right? So I don't think a thing like that would work, but I do think that like a threshold of like a low threshold of how much someone has to stream in order to start making like a certain tier makes sense. But that's the tough thing is if you ask Spotify to govern themselves, it's not gonna be sick. It's not gonna work. But one thing I do think is cool is there was just a bill introduced. I don't know where it is. I don't pay quite close enough attention to politics, but a bill that was just introduced a separate royalty that is
Mm.
it's at least a minimum of a penny per stream, and then it's kind of distributed not equally to every single artist. It's distributed sort of in a like smaller artists will get a bigger percentage, bigger artists will get a smaller percentage. So you don't have like Drake like.
So basically, you're saying, a lot of people must be kind of not happy with this,
Mhm.
and there's a bit of a movement to make this work more for the artists. You think?
Oh, big time.
So maybe technology just kind of became like so far ahead that the musicians kind of were kind of caught off guard. They got hurt by the pandemic and they couldn't
Mhm.
perform, and then they kind of got hurt by music distribution, and then it's
Mhm.
like maybe finally coming back and music will come from it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something I feel like is kind of missing from the debate about streaming is every time there's a new media, a new royalty structure has to happen. And in the early days of that new media, then people just aren't making money that they would be after it was figured out. So like uh, music and movies, for example, or digital media in general, I think there's a separate royalty for music in I think like Netflix movies or there's streaming media, something like that.
Different classifications,
Yeah,
earnings depending where it is, how it's used,
exactly, exactly.
Who's going to hear it? Are
So
they actually your fans, or is it just background music?
yeah, 100%. So there's actually systems in place for this kind of thing already. It just has not been applied to streaming yet, which I'd be very excited about that.
What do the royalties look like if they play your music in Kohls for women to be buying blouses too?
I don't really
because I've been saying that for years.
I don't know about that because I've never had a song in rotation on like Muzak, which is what that is. But I can tell you, I had a song on and still have one on like the American Airlines like music section.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you like scroll through, you go to the music, go through the albums or whatever.
That's cool.
One song that I was a part of is on that, and for some reason, it makes me more money on my royalties than any other thing.
You know, what's next for Skyler Acord?
Mm-hmm.
What are you gonna do? What do you want to do? And most importantly, what things do you want the viewers and listeners of this to check out?
Well, I think the next thing immediately for me is just finishing more of my own music. I have a 3 EP series that I'm working on. The first one is already out, True Viridian. The second one that I'm working on is called True Vanity. Mm-hmm. Third one is going to be called True Violence.
A lot of truths.
Yeah, a lot of truths, a lot of TV. And it's kind of a concept thing about like kind of just like rediscovering myself through creating my own media instead of relying on other media to define me.
That's awesome. I mean, we'll have links in the description below. Anything else, we'll also put your Instagram and your other channels where people can find you, so see a little bit more about you and your music and the different projects you work on, including the things maybe we didn't have time to touch on. And actually, for those of you out there that are from the watch channel, I know you have a special watch that you were given. I wonder if we just want to touch on that for a second before we forget. They might find it interesting. I know this was presented to you.
Yeah, I guess it's 13 of 20. I don't know anything about watches because I'm just not nice to things on my wrist. So this doesn't really leave the case ever, but it is a 21 Pilots watch, exclusive watch, and custom, I think.
So this was made custom for 21 Pilots by Circuit, a small micro brand. I believe they're out of Colorado. They have a lot of cool, interesting models today. But, somehow 21 Pilots had this commissioned by them. They have the logo on the dial. I'll have a picture here. But, what was the story behind this? Because you were working with them in the tour and they gave this to everyone?
Well, yeah, to 20 of us, I guess. And I think just sort of like the core sort of like A and B party. And I think it's really awesome just because like I've always been kind of bad at remembering and memorializing like big events in my life. So I kind of take it for granted. So something like that is like, yeah, this was the cap of a very crazy couple of years, a very crazy album cycle. So this was, this represents all the like private jets I got to take.
Yeah, we'll have to save some of those stories for another time. That's
right.
Some of the crazy things that you experienced on your Latin America or South American.
Oh yeah. That was, plenty.
We'll bring you on, if people out there would like to see it in the future. Thanks for sharing this with me as well as all the other things that you shared. I definitely appreciate you coming on. Once again, guys, please check them out. Link in the description below. And thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, guys.